In 2003, the most feared heavyweight fighter alive owed $23 million. His homes were gone, his cars were gone, his money was gone. The man who had once terrified the entire world had absolutely nothing left. Just years earlier, he had earned more money than almost anyone alive. His Connecticut estate had 21 rooms, and he kept Bengal tigers as pets. Entire arenas fell silent the moment his name appeared on the fight card. So how does a man who earned $300 million go completely broke? How does someone that powerful, that famous, and that celebrated lose everything? What hidden force is capable of erasing that kind of overwhelming, enormous wealth? This is the complete documented story of how Mike Tyson lost absolutely everything. By the end of this video, you will understand a trap that destroys fortunes. Michael Gerard Tyson was born in 1966 in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. Brownsville was one of the most impoverished and violent neighborhoods in all America. His father had abandoned the family, leaving his mother to survive completely alone. By just 10 years old, he had already been arrested dozens of times. At 13, authorities sent him to a juvenile reform school in upstate New York. That reform school is where he met the man who changed his entire life. Cus D'Amato was a legendary boxing trainer with an extraordinary gift for seeing talent. He watched this angry, fearless teenager and saw greatness that everyone else had missed. D'Amato became his legal guardian and brought him home to Catskill, New York. For the very first time in his life, Mike Tyson had real structure. He trained obsessively every single day with a focus that bordered on frightening. By 16, he was already sparring with professional fighters much older than himself. Then, in November 1985, tragedy arrived before the biggest dream had fully come true. D'Amato died before seeing what he had spent his final years building inside Mike. But the discipline D'Amato had built inside Tyson held firm, at least for now. In November 1986, at 20 years old, Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion ever. He destroyed Trevor Berbick in the second round with raw, overwhelming, unstoppable power. The entire boxing world went quiet and simply stared at what it had witnessed. Opponents described his punching as something they had never physically experienced before in their lives. Money started arriving in amounts that remain difficult to fully comprehend even today. His 1988 fight against Michael Spinks alone earned Tyson $22 million. The entire fight lasted 91 seconds before Spinks landed hard on the canvas. Promoters, managers, and agents began circling him the way sharks circle wounded prey. By his mid-20s, estimates put his net worth above $100 million. He felt completely untouchable, and exactly that feeling is where the danger truly begins. But here is exactly where the story of Mike Tyson begins to quietly fracture. Three separate forces were simultaneously eroding his empire without him ever noticing their work. The first was spending that had grown completely and dangerously beyond any rational control. He kept Bengal tigers as house pets, costing hundreds of thousands to maintain annually. He purchased a gold-plated bathtub for $2.2 million in his home. His Connecticut estate cost hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month just to operate. His personal monthly expenses at peak were officially estimated at over $400,000. The second destructive force was the circle of people profiting directly from his generosity. His longtime promoter, Don King, was later accused of misappropriating enormous sums from Tyson. Tyson would eventually sue King for $100 million and reach a settlement, but that settlement arrived years too late to reverse the financial damage already complete. The third force was the one nobody in his circle ever discussed or addressed. In 1992, he was convicted on a serious charge and sentenced to 6 years. He served 3 years in prison while the boxing world moved completely forward without him. When he returned to the ring in 1995, both the sport and he had changed. The big fights came again, but the financial catastrophe underneath was already completely irreversible. In June 1997, he bit a piece of Evander Holyfield during their rematch. He was disqualified immediately, suspended from boxing, and his public image shattered beyond repair. The fights that followed were smaller, the purses lower, and the stakes far diminished. His team, however, continued spending at exactly the same pace as always before. No one in his circle said stop, because stopping meant their own income disappeared. By 2003, the financial picture had become brutally simple and completely impossible to escape. He owed $23 million with virtually no liquid assets remaining at all. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in August 2003, and the news shocked everyone. His Connecticut estate was liquidated, his fleet of vehicles auctioned off at public sale. The Bengal tigers were surrendered, the gold bathtubs sold, and the jewelry completely gone. People who had benefited from his generosity for years were suddenly impossible to locate. He later described this as the loneliest and most disorienting stretch of his entire life. The most feared man in the world had become someone struggling to cover basic expenses. When analysts later studied this collapse, 3 consistent patterns became impossible to overlook. The first pattern was the total absence of anyone truly protecting his financial interests. Every advisor, manager, and promoter in his world was serving their own agenda first. He signed contracts without reading them and trusted people who owed him no loyalty. The second pattern was lifestyle inflation that moved faster than even his income could. When monthly expenses consistently exceed monthly income, the outcome is mathematically always the same. This truth holds whether you earn $40,000 or $40 million per year. The third pattern is the hardest to acknowledge honestly, yet it is the most important. Tyson had never been taught how money actually works or how to protect it. His entire life, physical power was the only currency that had ever made sense. When that power faded, there was no financial foundation waiting underneath to support him. The real lesson is not that he was irresponsible. He was simply unprepared. That distinction matters deeply because it applies to millions of Americans living right now. Mike Tyson has since rebuilt portions of his life through entertainment and small business. He speaks openly and honestly about the financial decisions that nearly destroyed his legacy. But the fortune earned between 1986 and 2003 was never fully recovered again. What happened to him is happening right now to Americans at every income level. The only difference is the number of zeros attached to the losses involved. If this story moved you, share it with someone who truly needs to hear it.